26.17 is going to feature buffs to many controversial champions, as we've got Yasuo, Yone, Qiyana, and Aurelia all on the buff list. Nerfs to OP picks like Nasus and Thresh are on the way, followed by a couple of item changes, so we've got a bit of everything to break down in this one as we provide you guys with a complete update to the solo queue tier list for every role. But while every patch changes the meta, losers queue still feels real as ever. Top laners getting solo killed 5 times, junglers farming while everybody else fights a dragon, supports farming your waves, and ADCs getting caught on cooldown. Those players aren't going anywhere, and the truth is, they exist in every elo. So if your entire strategy for climbing relies on getting better ones, you're never going to escape. That's why SkillCapped Season 16 Essentials course teaches you how to carry without relying on your team. One complete course for every role, breaking down the exact decisions you need at every stage of the game. How to consistently win trades, how to manage waves and when to recall, and how to convert your lead into dominating the entire map, even while your teammates are running around doing absolutely nothing, including when to roam, when to split push, when to group, when to farm, or when to gank. And when you're ready to go even deeper, our advanced courses on macro and trading teach you exactly how to take your game to the next level. For junglers, our world record clears are designed to give you countless minutes of extra free time, and our weekly challenger commentaries show you step by step how to carry real games on your chosen champion, including how to win your most difficult matchups with the same unreliable teammates you deal with every single day. We've even tested these systems through our bronze to diamond climbs, taking real hard-stuck players and getting them the rank they've always wanted using only our courses, documenting their entire journey. You can't stop your teammates from trolling, but you can stop them from deciding whether you climb. And because everything is backed up by our rank up guarantee, you can try it completely risk-free. Check out SkillCapped today using the exclusive discount in the description or pinned comment below. So Riot continues to chip away at buffing ADCs, as we've seen Yuntal, Hurricane, Fleet, and ADC's Magic Resist buffed in recent patches, and now we've got a Stormrazor buff for 26.17. It's just the attack speed that is going up from 20 to 25% though, so not a major game-breaking buff, but something that will give some indirect rise to the likes of Zeri and Jhin. Very few other ADCs have been taking Stormrazor at a high rate in recent patches, so we don't really see these buffs shifting priority over to the item. Sundered Sky got nerfed last patch, and Riot has decided those nerfs weren't enough, so they are nerfing the item yet again for 26.17. AD is down from 45 to 40, while health is dropping from 450 to 400. Champs who have had over a 50% play rate with Sundered Sky in recent patches who will be most negatively influenced by these nerfs include Jarvan, Lee Sin, Xin Zhao, Aatrox, Wukong, and Vi. So a nerf across the board to many fighter champs, which gives rise to AP and tank junglers a bit more for 26.17. Cho'Gath is a tank who has been struggling more in recent patches, so he's the first top laner on the buff list, with his E base damage going up from 20 scaling to 100 to 30 scaling to 110. So not a major needle moving buff that will turn Cho into a top tier champ, but one that should be enough to help Cho'Gath escape the B tier, as we'll be bumping him into A. Aurelia is going to receive a buff to her Q-AD ratio, as Riot will be increasing it from 70 to 80%. So not a bad change at all, and Aurelia should find herself slotting in as a good A tier pickup for 26.17. We'll have to see if an Endless Hunger purchase makes a comeback on Aurelia for this patch, because the item gives you 65 AD, which would synergize a lot better with this buff compared to running Hullbreaker. So instead of partially reverting the 26.16 Nasus buff, Riot has decided to nerf him in a different way, with his passive lifesteal dropping. It's going down from 12 to 10% pre-6, which will hurt early laning a bit, but we can't see it being significant enough to where Nasus loses a ton of power. Keep in mind, Nasus has been a 52% win rate top laner in 26.16, stretching closer to 54% in the lower elo. So even if this nerf dropped his win rate by 1.5%, which is the max we'd see it affecting him, he would still be in a great spot. As a result, we're going to hold off on dropping Nasus down the tier list for now, but there is a chance he may be in need of a demotion down into S, depending on exactly how the nerf lands. So if we have a look at the top lane tier list, with Nasus getting nerfed instead of dropping him out of the OP tier, we're going to bump Garen up to join him, as we now think Garen and Nasus will be at around the same power level for 26.17. Garen just got indirectly stronger last patch with both Tiamat and Berserker's Greaves buffs, and then players are still completely sleeping on Ghostblaze, a core item on Garen, so his overall win rate should be even higher than it is if more players built him optimally. Nerfs to Sundered Sky are going to negatively impact Aatrox, and he had just barely been holding on to an S tier spot last patch, so we're going to drop him down to A. Jax doesn't like the Sundered Sky nerfs either, and he had been clinging to an A tier slot in recent patches, so we're going to demote him down to B. Trundle is a more niche top laner who's getting buffed for this patch, with his attack speed on W going up at max rank from 90 to 110%. It's hard to say exactly how much power a buff like this will bring Trundle, but we're not super optimistic about it, so we are going to leave him in the B tier for now and reassess assess for mid-patch if need be. We'll cover the Vayne changes in detail when going over bot lane, but TLDR is that she's getting a lot weaker. Q mana cost is up from 30 to 46 early on, and W max health damage is down from 6 to 4% early on, so the laning strength of Vayne is way weaker for top lane. We wouldn't be surprised if Vayne is actually one of the weakest top laners now, but with so many different changes, it's hard to say for sure, so we're going to leave her in the B tier for the time being. So for the jungle changes now, it's just Trundle who's on the buff list, and like we just mentioned when covering top lane, it's his W attack speed at max rank that is going up by 20%. So a stronger mid to late game for Trundle, and if we look at the analytics for Trundle in recent patches, he's actually been a much stronger champ in the jungle as opposed to top lane. Top lane matchups can be hit or miss a lot of the time, but when playing Trundle in the jungle, you don't gotta worry about that, and you actually outduel the majority of fighter junglers throughout the early game due to how broken Trundle's Q is. Over the past 3 patches, Trundle has been hovering just below a 51% win rate in the jungle, so he could actually turn into one of the more sleeper OP picks as a result of this buff. We've had Trundle in the jungle A tier for a while now, but with this buff coming through, we're going to go ahead and give him a push into S for 26.17. Trundle's 2 more common matchups in recent patches that he's actually had a positive win rate against in Graves and Nocturne are actually nerfed for this patch too, so even more indirect power headed Trundle's way. Speaking of Graves, here's how Riot will be nerfing him for this patch, as his Q1 bonus AD ratio drops from 65 to 50%, while Q2 return damage AD ratio is being lowered from 55 scaling to 115% to 45 scaling to 105%. As we can see in the comparison clips, when you are on your 1 item spike in the early game, this will equate to around a 9 damage loss if both parts of your Q hit. Graves has been the most played jungler in recent patches, and this nerf doesn't seem like it's going to impact him a drastic amount, so we will be leaving him in the jungle A tier for now. Nocturne has been very highly rated on the tier list for a while now, so he's going to be nerfed for 26.17, with his base armor dropping from 38 to 36, and base health is going down from 655 to 640. So a couple of early game nerfs to Nocturne will impact him enough to drop him out of the OP tier, but we can't see him falling too far down, so we'll only be demoting him into S. For the jungle tier list in 26.17, we've got a couple of noteworthy adjustments as Nocturne drops out of the OP tier, and taking his spot is going to be Rammus. Rammus has been one of the most underrated junglers lately, and with the Sunfire Aegis buffs last patch, along with the jungle pet buffs, he is shot up to being one of the best performing junglers in solo queue. Trundle and Rammus are going to be the 2 champs in specific for this patch that we expect to be incredibly strong, but they won't likely see very much play, so that gives you such a huge advantage. Playing strong champs who are more underrated is amazing because the opponent you're up against won't understand the limits of your champ, and this can give you an edge up in so many scenarios. Kiana is receiving a buff to her Q for this patch, but Kiana jungle has been a pretty weak pick for a while now, so we're not expecting her to gain enough power to where she moves up the tier list. For the mid lane changes now, we've got LeBlanc on the buff list with her attack speed ratio going from 0.4 to 0.625, and attack speed growth is down from 2.35 to 1.5%. W and RW AP ratios are being increased, going from 80 to 90%. LeBlanc actually hasn't been all that bad in recent patches, and with these buffs going through, we definitely see her in need of a push out of the B tier and into A. Kiana is receiving 2 buffs to her Q, with the base damage going up by 10 at each rank, and the bonus AD ratio is being increased from 85 to 90%. We don't see this buff swaying Kiana's power level substantial amount, but it's likely enough to lead to a push into the mid lane A tier, so we're going to give her the bump up. Yasuo is going to see his mid to late game become stronger moving forward, as passive crit damage penalty is dropping from 10 to 5%. Something to keep an eye on for this patch on Yasuo is a Stormrazor Rush. The item had been outperforming in 26.16, and with crit now being stronger on Yasuo along with the buff to Stormrazor, it makes a lot more sense to rush the item. Power wise, we don't really expect for Yasuo to become significantly better as a result of this change though, so we'll be leaving him in the A tier for now. Yone is going to receive the exact same buff that Yasuo was getting, with crit penalty dropping from 10 to 5%. So unless you're rushing a crit item, then we can't see this buff being overly impactful, and Blade of the Ruined King is likely to remain the staple rush on Yone, so we're going to be leaving him placed in the mid lane B tier. Aurelion Sol is getting buffed with his Q mana cost going down from 35 scaling to 55 to 30 scaling to 50, while W cooldown is being lowered from 22 scaling to 16 seconds to 22 scaling to 14 seconds. Q buff is alright, but the W buff you don't even get to take advantage of until later on in the game, so we don't expect for Aurelion Sol to be gaining very much power, and we'll be leaving him in the mid lane A tier. Xerath has been a really strong mid and bot lane carry for a while now, so he's nerfed for this patch, with Q damage being lowered from 75 scaling to 235 to 70 scaling to 230. If Q damage was down by 10, then we could actually see him losing a decent chunk of power, but the fact it's only down by 5 means he's likely to remain a top tier pick, and we won't be dropping him out of the S tier as a result. So looking at the mid lane tier list, OP tier has been the same for a few patches now, with Fizz and Vex leading the way. LeBlanc and Kiana moving up the tier list are the two major changes for this patch. Mid lane Aurelia will see a boost in strength for this patch, but she has been a big underperformer in recent patches, so we're going to hold off on bumping her up the tier list as the buff may not be enough to warrant a move into A. Mid lane Nasus is going to be added to the tier list for this patch, as he's actually been performing even better as a mid laner than as a top laner. Nerf to lifesteal hurts him a bit, but not enough to where he isn't worthy of an addition to the tier list, so we'll be placing him in S as one of the more sleeper OP mid lane champs. Gwen is another more niche mid lane champ that has been picking up some traction in recent patches, and with her buff from last patch, her win rate has increased by around 1%, so Gwen slots into the S tier as well. There's just one ADC who will be directly changed for this patch, and it's Vayne. Base stats are being adjusted so that health is up from 550 to 580, but health per level is down from 103 to 98. Base health regen is up from 3.5 to 4, but base health regen per level is down from 0.55 to 0.5. Attack speed ratio is going up from 0.658 to 0.67, while attack speed per level drops from 3.3 to 2.8%. Q mana cost is taking a big hit, going from 30 flat to 46 scaling to 30. W max health true damage is nerfed, going from 6 scaling to 10% to 4 scaling to 10%, while W minimum damage is dropping by 10 at all ranks. So these are really strange changes to Vayne. The champ has not been a high priority pick in solo queue prior to these changes, so we see her being one of the weakest champs in the role now. As a result, we'll be demoting Vayne down into the ADC B tier. So the bot lane meta has been all over the place recently, with mages taking over the spotlight, but for 26.17, we're finally at a point where a few traditional ADCs are actually outperforming mages. Jinx is one of them, and she's up in the OP tier as the recent buffs to Hurricane have given her a nice edge up on a lot of other ADCs. Zeri is another outlier who loves to build Hurricane and is actually being slept on quite a bit right now. Zeri will indirectly benefit from the Stormrazor buffs that are being issued for this patch too, so we think Zeri is going to land as one of the top 3 ADCs and are moving her into the OP tier. Similar to our thoughts on mid lane Xerath, we don't expect for the nerfs he's receiving to impact his power level a substantial amount, so he's going to continue to be placed in the S tier. Jhin will get a bit better for this patch with the buffs to Stormrazor, but he's been one of the weaker ADCs in recent patches, so we don't think the buff will be enough to shift him up the tier list. Not much of a surprise to see some Thresh nerfs for this patch with how heavily he's been overperforming, as Riot will be reducing his E active damage from 75 scaling to 255 to 65 scaling to 245, and then E AP ratio is going down from 70 to 60%. So nothing major here, and all this will do is even things out so that Thresh is no longer the standalone best support, but we're still going to leave him in the OP tier. So looking at the support tier list, joining Thresh in the OP tier is going to be Leona, as we expect both champs to be about the same power level in 26.17. Poppy is also getting bumped back into the S tier for this patch because the nerfs she got last patch didn't actually end up mattering at all. You now just take Aftershock instead of Hail of Blades on Poppy, and she's perfectly fine, so still one of the best melee supports for solo queue as long as you're running the correct setup. Right now, there's a pretty good mix of everything to choose from, with few champs being truly bad in the support role. Two of these champs who are definitely a bit on the weaker side now are Pyke and Camille. Hail of Blades nerfs last patch put a pretty decent dent in both champs' power level, so they are lower down the tier list right now. But while lists like these show you what to play, our brand new Season 16 Essentials courses for every role teach you how to win, each designed to walk you through every stage of the game from start to finish, from the exact trading and recall timers you need to win lane, to the mid-game macro decisions 99% of players get completely wrong, all the way to the team fighting tips and tricks challengers abuse to always deal the highest damage possible. Whether you're a top laner in the most unfavorable matchup possible, a mid laner having to deal with everybody in your lane 24/7, a jungler trying to balance ganking with farming, an ADC stuck trying to hard carry with a support who just exists to grief you, or a support that's struggling to carry games on your own. Our Essentials courses are tailor-made to focus on the exact concepts that actually matter for climbing on your role in your elo. Check them out today, completely risk-free, using the link in the pinned comment or description below, as if you don't climb at least 5 divisions, you get every penny back. So that's gonna be all for this one as we look ahead to 26.17. Thank you all so much for watching, we'll see you in the next one.